Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Esther Avant. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. Confidence is an essential part of loving yourself. It's a feeling of self-assurance arising from one's appreciation of their own abilities and qualities. Yet there's often an aspect that gets in the way of true sustainable confidence, and that's how we view and think about our physical form. When we're not happy with our bodies, our confidence tends to tank. I sat down with sports nutritionist, personal trainer, health and weight loss coach, and owner of AE Coaching, Esther Avant. And together we moved through building confidence, the important steps we all need to take to properly care for our bodies and minds. And then we even dived into how women over 40 can best change their mindset as they age. We really span the gamut of what it means to be confident and healthy. So sit back and get comfortable because the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. So today we're talking about self-confidence, about the inner work, about the physical health that so many times women come into my office or they're sending me a DM and they're saying, life is okay. I'm doing a lot of healing work, but there are these other pieces that are just not falling into place. So I want to help all the listeners fall into a place of self-confidence, self-esteem, really mastering those 5 areas of our lives, the 5 masters I talk about all the time, which is spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, and financial health. Esther, you are an expert in self-confidence and that physical aspect. Please introduce yourself and let's get started.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Esther Avant. I am a personal trainer, sports nutritionist, and health and weight loss coach. And throughout the evolution of my career, I've sort of added bits and pieces from here and there to be able to offer what I consider sort of full spectrum coaching to clients. And by that, I mean, we're not just talking exercise. We're not just talking nutrition. We're putting it all together because the piece that you touched on, the confidence, the inner work, is so important and so often overlooked because we're just hyper-focused on tell me what to eat, tell me what to do for workouts.
Right.
And then we wonder, why don't any of these changes stick? How come my weight yo-yos? How come I fall out of these habits? And it's because we've never done the deeper work. How do I see myself? And all of that stuff is really what helps cement the changes and helps you step into the identity of the person that you want to be. And when you pair the exercise and nutrition with the mindset related work and the inner work to align with the actions that you take on a daily basis, that's when you become her. And that's when you find yourself in a position where your confidence, your ability to stay there is rock solid. And also that it spills over into the other areas of your life. You start to see, I was able to do this with my physical health. I'm stronger now. I can push harder than I thought I could. I can resist short-term temptations, all those things. When you prove that you can do that to yourself, when it comes to your physical health, you can do it in any of the other areas of your life.
Amen to that. And yet getting there seems so simple when we're talking about it, but doing it is something that many people struggle with. Where do we start if we're gearing our mindset and we're gearing our physical body into a space of really owning our physical and mental health? From your perspective, where do we start? That's usually the get off point, right? Is that we don't know where to start, so we just don't.
You're absolutely right. And a big piece of that, I think, stems from having all or nothing mentalities when it comes to physical health. Right. We feel like, well, I don't have an hour or two every day to get my workouts in. I don't have the time or the desire or the knowledge to be meal prepping these identical meals to eat out of Tupperware, and I don't want to do that anyway.
Right.
And since we feel like we can't do all the things, we end up doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step to getting started is to scale back your expectations and your intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Just do less, because at the end of the day, when you're doing nothing, you're not even getting your foot off the starting line. Just taking a step forward in whatever that looks like for you is going to help you get some wins under your belt, which is going to build confidence, help you get some momentum going, and feel confident tackling the next thing, taking the next step. So what we do in our coaching is we distill exercise and nutrition down into big rocks. There's the handful of key behaviors that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. And when you focus your energy on learning and mastering those, you're able to do them better because you're not spreading yourself so thin. And you're able to more quickly get yourself to a place where they feel easier, more on autopilot. So they're taking less mental energy to actually do. One of the best places you can break in is just walking. Right. I know it seems simple, and that's part of why we don't do it, because it feels like beneath us. Like, no, I have a lot of work I need to do on this physical body. Walking can't possibly be the answer. Is it the only answer? No, but it's a good place to take that first step. You can do it literally anywhere, even if that's around your house. There are YouTube videos for walking in place, walking around your house. You can go outside there. There's just a very low barrier to entry. And it's a great way to start developing an overall more active lifestyle. As far as your nutrition goes, generally, even if you don't have a background in nutrition, you have a relatively good idea of the habits that you're in that aren't supporting your physical health, or the ones that you want to build that will. So what I recommend before really doing anything else is just taking a piece of paper and brain dumping all of the changes that you would like to at some point make to your nutrition. And from there, it's helpful just to like get it out on paper. And from there, you can sort of organize them in one of two ways. If you're feeling really overwhelmed, start with the smallest change. Maybe that's just drinking a glass of water in the morning, just some small vote for this healthier version of yourself. Yeah. Like I said, what that's going to do is get you a win, get some momentum going, help you tackle then you kind of the next step up from there. Right. If you're feeling like I am in a really bad place, I need to be really making a dent in this really fast, then start with the change that is going to give you the most bang for your buck. And that will likely be a bit harder to implement. But when you do, it's going to give you a big boost, and it may well sort of take care of some of the smaller things beneath it. It can have this kind of cascade effect where you're like, oh, I actually don't need to now focus on my water, because by nature of doing this other thing, I started drinking, less alcohol or less soda, and naturally increased my water. So it might take care of some other stuff. Right. And that's where to start, is just break it down to something. A good test you can give yourself is, am I on a scale of 1 to 10? Am I 9 out of 10 confident that I can do this thing even on my worst week? A lot of times we have kind of these rose-colored glasses where you're like, well, if the stars align and my kid doesn't get sick and I'm not busy at work and I don't have any traffic, like, yes, I can do it. When's the last time you had a week like that? Right. What you really want to think about is, if everything, kind of goes to crap, then can I still do it? So start really, really small, because again, the times that you have set goals and not followed through on them is what has taken a toll on your confidence. You have little by little created this reputation with yourself. It doesn't matter the goals I set, because I'm not going to do it anyway. And after week after week after week of doing that, you just don't trust yourself to follow through. So the biggest benefit in the beginning is just repairing that self-reputation. And as you start to learn, okay, I am going to follow through, I am just as reliable with myself as I am with other people, then you can start getting the momentum going and start tackling the bigger things and be consistent for long enough that the physical changes are obvious. I love what you just said. Repairing this reputation with the self. It literally gave me chills across my body, because it's literally what we're trying to get people to do all day long, is to repair this reputation with the self. And we look at ourselves as this different being than everybody else, right? Like, oh, it's okay for them, but it's not okay for me, or they can do it, but I can't. And that is such a powerful way to put it. I'm repairing this reputation with myself. And if I can do that,
and I create these little small victories, then I can move forward. You said something just a minute ago that I want to touch on because I can hear the women listening going, but I don't have a 9 out of 10 most days. I'm a 5 out of 10 most at best. What happens then? How can we motivate ourselves to continue to move forward if we're more of a 5 than a 9?
Great question. So I like to think a couple of different ways about motivation. The first is that motivation is a feeling that no one has 100% of the time, nor do you have to. And you don't even need to be motivated to start, because taking action will help you get motivated. So I think it's important to just kind of normalize. If you're not feeling motivated all the time, or if you're kind of, half in, half out, there's nothing wrong with you. Right. That's a normal experience. Everybody goes through that. Part of what helps successful people be successful is that they aren't relying on motivation as a feeling to get them going. Yeah. So that's where habits and routines come in. For example, I've been exercising for about 20 years now. I don't give it any thought as to how am I feeling about this? Do I want to do it? I just do it, very much like brushing my teeth. Right. And as a result, I'm incredibly consistent because it's not a consideration. It's not a decision I'm having to make each day. I'm not negotiating with myself. Should I do it later? Maybe I'll do less. It just gets done. So a big part of why building habits in the first place is so important is to get yourself to that point where the actions happen regardless of the motivation. Right. I think the piece that helps tie that in to the day-to-day actions is remembering that each of these choices that you're making day in and day out is part of you reaching that larger, longer term goal. It's very easy to get caught up in the moment and just be feeling like these are just items on my to-do list. I have to check the workout box. I have to check the, ate my veggies box. And they feel completely separated from the ultimate thing that we're trying to create, which is the healthiest, happiest, most confident versions of ourselves. So it can really help a ton to remind yourself, why am I doing this? Why is it even on my radar or my list in the first place? Right. Oh, because making these health-centric choices day in and day out is going to get me to the result that I want. I don't need to want to do the thing right now, but I do want the outcome of having done it consistently. So what are my options? And I think the final piece there is to really hone in on the ultimate kind of why, what's driving you. It's not just about losing weight. It's not just about a single health marker. I want to lower my cholesterol. It's about what that means to you. Right. So you are probably very familiar with like the 5 whys exercise where you keep, like a very annoying toddler, you keep asking yourself, why is that important? Right. But you're getting to the core of the number on the scale is really just a proxy marker for I want to have more energy. I want to be independent for as long as I can because I don't want to be a burden on my adult children. I want to see my grandkids grow up. I want to have the confidence to start a business, pursue a promotion, whatever it is. When you start to really realize, oh, it's not just the weight, it's something else. It's so much more else. So when you kind of tie all of those things together, it helps you take action regardless of motivation. And then once you do that, and once you start to see that it's working, that's when the motivation kind of pops back up. And you're like, oh yeah, I actually want to keep doing this stuff because I can tell that it's working.
Right. You just really laid it on the line as to what I ask all of my women to do when we're talking about our 5 masters is get to the bottom, the baseline why. When we're setting goals, it happens so often. We'll throw the goal out there. I want to lose weight. Great. That actually means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. There is no attachment to it, right? It's a desire that has no motivation, no intention, no forward motion to it whatsoever. But if you get down to how is this going to benefit me? Go back to the idea of the brain dump. How is this going to benefit me long term? How can I anticipate this? That will actually give you that motivation.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's very easy to focus on the surface level, focus on the aesthetic. Like, I just want my clothes to fit better. I just do. Or I just felt good last time I was this weight, or that's what my driver's license says and I want it to match. I just do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having that piece of your goal.
Right.
we're allowed to have, kind of the superficial component as well.
Yes.
But the problem is when you're in the throes of temptation, when there is something short-term in your face that is at odds with that goal, if you don't have the emotional connection, it's so much easier to say, forget it.
Right.
And especially I notice this when you do start to get some initial progress. Say you've lost 10 or 15 pounds, kind of the immediate urgency of, I couldn't button my pants, or I was having to buy, I was about to have to buy a new size up and I didn't want to. Right. That urgency is now gone. Things are buttoning better. They're not cutting in as much. You don't need to go out and buy more. So if that was all that was driving you, it's very easy to then fall back into a place of complacency of like, oh, well, it's not so bad anymore. I'm not where I want to be yet, but it's not as bad as it was.
Right.
And then when you're faced with those short-term temptations, I'd rather be on the couch than do my workout, or I'd rather, eat this cookie now and I'll start the diet again on Monday. You're much more likely to make those short-term choices because you don't have anything more than the superficial driving you. So when you make the connection to, okay, these first 10, 50 pounds is amazing. And I'm glad that my day-to-day life is feeling better and my clothes are fitting better and all that. But ultimately, this is not yet where I want to stop because I've still yet to achieve, this other stuff kind of beneath the surface.
What you just described is something I see so often, and I actually call it the tanking of self-confidence, where we get the result on the short term, on the quick, right? However quick is, it doesn't have to be like overnight, but whatever the quick kind of hit is. And then we realize we're not putting as much effort to it. And everything that we pre-built begins to really go downhill. And we end up in a place that's much worse mentally, physically, whatever, instead of just staying consistent. What is your kind of lead there for women to realize that, just like you said, if you're not consistent, if you're not really understanding the why, what's the next step? Because I see it so often. Oh my gosh, I lost weight. I'm feeling great. I'm healing. I'm doing all this stuff. And then something happens and I don't have that motivation. And now I feel like it's a dumpster fire and I don't know, I have to start all over again, which is not true. You don't have to start all over again, right? So what's your thought behind that?
Great question. And it's something I see. The thing I always come back to is reminding you listening that these ups and downs are a normal part of the process.
Amen.
We tend to think that our progress is going to be very linear. It's a straight line from A to B, and I will just do the things that I'm told and I will get there very easily. And then when I do, I'll just go back to what I was doing before and, move on with my life.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's a very, probably all seen that meme of like, expectations versus reality. And it's just like this squiggly line. And
yes.
I liken it to, we think it's going to be like running around a track, which is, this oval, very predictable. And it's more like hiking a mountain where sometimes the trail is more clear than others. Sometimes you're obviously going the right direction. Sometimes you have switchbacks, or you feel like you're circling the same tree, or you sit down and you want to give up. And that's just what it's like for everyone. But instead of being vocal about that, everybody has a tendency to kind of clam up and make it something personal. There's just something wrong with me that I'm having this experience, but no one else knows what it's like. It doesn't happen to everybody else. And I'm embarrassed about that. So I don't want to say it out loud. And a big part of it, we actually made community one of the big pillars of our coaching program. Because initially I was working with all these clients one-on-one, and I would literally have back-to-back calls where everyone would tell me, I just feel like I'm the only person who. And I was like, you're not. You need to be exposed to other people to see how normal it is. So I think that's the number one is, do not let the normal ebbs and flows of these journeys make you think that something has gone wrong. That's part of it. And the lows, we call it the grind, when you're just not feeling like doing the things and you still feel like you have a long way to go. That's what's revealing the skills that you need to develop and the tools that you need in your arsenal. You will come out the other side of those stronger, more resilient, better equipped for the next period of kind of stormy weather. when you get through those.
Mhm.
So that what you said earlier about like, you're never starting over. That's exactly it. We have this tendency of like, oh, it's right back to square one. It's like, it's never back to square one. You are
Right.
now in a better position to navigate those ups and downs. And you have all of this knowledge and experience that you didn't have before.
Mhm.
You're only getting better and stronger, and you're just not putting that filter on it.
Right.
So I think that's a huge piece of it. And then the other piece is recognizing that all the different areas of your life are always in flux.
Right.
And it's just not realistic to expect that your physical health dials are always going to be at their maximum level.
Mhm.
When you think about it, you have your sort of 5 areas. You can't prioritize all of them at once. So
Right.
there are going to be times that you need to figure out, what does it look like for me to still show up for my physical health, but also take into account that my work life is a lot more demanding right now. What does
Mhm.
it look like to need to be more present with my family, but not let myself go totally on the back burner? So not feeling like it needs to be maximum effort all the time, and just figuring out what's more than nothing right now. How do I keep the ball rolling a little bit, even if it's very slow, knowing that the time will come that I can give it more. And as long as I haven't let myself come to a dead stop, it's going to be
Right.
easier to keep going.
Mm. The words, what's more than nothing right now. Let that soak in for just a moment, because that is really it in everything that we do. What's more than nothing? And giving ourselves credit. Oh my gosh, give yourself some damn credit, please. Like, it gets so frustrating for those of us who are trying to guide you in those places, that it's like, well, it's not enough. Yes, it is. It's always enough if you're doing something, and we have to stay in that focus. So, how do you keep people in their focus of something is more than nothing?
We use, actually, I said it a second ago, we use a visual of a dial rather
Mhm.
than on-off switch. We
Right.
talked earlier about how many people approach physical health with an all or nothing approach. If I can't do it all,
Mhm.
I'm not going to bother. And we just kind of oscillate, switch on, switch off.
Right.
And what you really want to think about is your exercise, your nutrition, all the different components of your life on separate radio dials that can be turned
Mm.
up or down depending on what's going on in your life. I always picture kind of like a pilot's dashboard where you got a lot of different knobs
Ah.
that are constantly being adjusted. And it's about learning how to live in the middle.
Mm.
All those different, iterations between 0 and 100.
Right.
There's so many opportunities in there. And for starters, decoupling exercise and nutrition and having them be completely separate entities is so important.
Mm.
I know a lot of us, myself included, always kind of lump them together. And
Right.
it felt like if I'm eating well, I'm more likely to be exercising. If I'm exercising, I'm more likely to eat well. But if one falls off, the other gets totally scrapped too.
Right.
But in reality, they're totally separate. And it can be really helpful, especially if you're working through something like an injury that's limiting your movement, to instead feel like, well, I can't move, so I can't eat, why bother paying attention to my food either? If you instead think, because I'm giving less to my exercise right now, I have more to give to my nutrition right now. And they
Mm.
can sort of have this like yin and yang relationship rather than being lumped together as either or. So that I think can help a lot as well. And a couple other things. One is keeping your deep why somewhere visible, writing down
Yes.
what it's really all about.
Yeah.
So that in those low moments when you're tempted to go the nothing route, you have that visible reminder of, oh yeah, this is really important to me. And I may
Mhm.
not be able to show up to the level that I would like right now, but I still can do something. And like you just said, that's better than nothing. And then I think the last piece that we've had a lot of success with clients is using just a basic consistency tracker,
Mm.
basically a sticker chart for grownups. We work with a lot of moms who will actually use their kids' stickers,
Yeah.
but just again, some sort of visual to help you see the efforts that you're making.
Mhm.
It helps twofold. One, it's really motivating to see the streak going or the
Right.
stickers going up. It just feels good.
Yeah.
And it's also a very easy way to objectively take a look at how you're showing up.
Right.
If you're telling yourself, I want to do, my workouts 4 days a week, and you've got 1 sticker last week and 2 this week, and
Yeah.
you're just really kind of spotty, it's very easy to see that at a glance and say, okay, do I need to adjust the goal based on what's going on in my life?
Yeah.
Or do I need to adjust my effort to hit the goal that I set for myself that I was confident I could achieve?
I love the idea of the sticker chart because it does help us celebrate. I love that idea. Obviously, if we see that we're celebrating, which is going to bring up our self-confidence and our self-esteem, any kind of forward movement does that for us. Witnessing it is a totally different effort and mindset. How do you teach women to take their progress and move it into evidence that creates self-confidence?
Oh, so good. It's really about noticing your progress in the first place. And so many of us have a tendency to focus just on the scale. And if the scale is not moving, it's not working.
Right.
We put a big emphasis on a variety of metrics of progress, because ultimately, like we were talking about, the weight on the scale is the surface level goal.
Right.
Almost no one I've ever worked with has said that is it. The only thing I care about is that number.
Right.
Most women say it's about energy, it's about confidence, it's about independence, it's about strength, in which case the scale is not the best indicator of whether you are getting closer to those things.
Right.
So how do we match how we're gauging progress to what actually matters to you? So we do that in a variety of ways. One is doing a weekly check-in where we have clients reflect on their week. They share the wins, they share what the challenges were. It gives them an opportunity to reflect and start noticing their own sort of less tangible progress.
Right.
And we encourage keeping a running list of non-scale victories. All the, quote unquote, small things that would either go unnoticed or would just be this like kind of blip on the radar of, oh yeah, that was cool, but like now I've forgotten and I'll never think about it again.
Right.
So we keep these running lists. We actually got one from a client who's graduating soon, and it was pages long of all the things that she's learned and what's changed about her and she's accomplished. And that helps build confidence more than anything. To see, sure, the physical is fine. I had a client years ago who said she was finally able to buy like knee-high boots because she could zip them over her calves for the first time. And that felt amazing. Right. Another client noticed that she was in her 40s at the time, and she was able to balance on one leg when she was skiing to get herself like in and out of her snow pants. And she was like, previously I'd have to go find a bench and, I'd need somebody to hold me up. And now I'm like this strong, stable woman who can do this thing. So all this day-to-day stuff, I was in the break room and I wasn't even tempted by the donuts that were there. I chose to take a walk at lunch instead of go out for, happy hour, whatever. When you first train yourself to notice, and then second, document those things, you have this running list of evidence. And it gets hard to deny that it's having a positive benefit. So that I think is a huge piece of it. The other piece is having someone like a coach who is in your corner, helping you turn the spotlight to the positive. Right. We naturally, just from an evolutionary standpoint, have a tendency to focus on the negative. I need to be alert for the threats so that I don't get eaten by a tiger. And as a result, it's much easier for us to fixate on the few things that aren't going well and overlook the mass of things that are going well.
Yes.
So when you have somebody else in it with you who helps you shift that spotlight to the positive and say, hey, have you noticed that you haven't been needing your 3 p.m. cup of coffee? Have you noticed that I ran out of patience, so I yelled at my kids and I ate my feelings about it, is happening much less often. Somebody to help you notice those things helps you then notice them yourself. And seeing that somebody else believes in you and can see the good in you starts to help you do the same. And it's sort of this gradual process. It's not like a snap your fingers and boom, there's confidence. It's this little by little, you almost don't notice it's happening until you have some sort of like thing that brings it to the forefront. And you're like, oh, I actually didn't even think twice about speaking up for myself or putting myself out there or, saying no to this thing. And that's when you realize, you know what, 6 months ago, a year ago, I never would have done that.
Right.
I must be more confident.
Right. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that witnessing where we do have that big activating event and all of a sudden we realize that we're not responding to our lives the way that we used to, right? And we've created a new thought process and a new way to show up. It's one of those things that a lot of women still struggle with. So, how do you teach confidence and recognizing it? We talked about building the evidence and we're aware but there's still that piece of having to connect the mind to the result.
Great question. I think a big piece of it is stepping into the identity that you want to embody.
Right.
A lot of times we try to change from this place of negativity. I don't like who I am now, and I'll like myself when I get there.
Yeah.
And that's part of why, we yo-yo and we're on this roller coaster, is because we feel like, we're basically just like trying to paint over this old thing. And we're like, I hope nobody knows that I'm like totally faking this and I'm such an imposter.
Right.
And then it's hard for those changes to stick because we feel like we're playing house.
Right.
Like it's just a matter of time before everybody realizes what a fraud I am, that I'm just this overweight, insecure person masquerading as a fit person, and the other shoe's going to drop at any moment now. The real way to build confidence and start living the life that you want and being the person that you want to be is to start embodying her now. Start thinking, what would the fit, healthy version of myself do in this situation? Or if you can't yet picture yourself in the situation, what would some other fit, healthy person do in this position? What are the actions she would take if she was faced with this choice, if this fork in the road? Which one would she choose? And you use that as your litmus test and you just start making decisions as her.
Yeah.
And that's how you become her. And that's how you, arrive at whatever that goal had been, with the confidence to know I can stay here no matter what. I have built the identity, the skills, the tools, the mindset to handle whatever life throws at me and trust that I will be able to figure it out.
What I love that you did not say, right? Because a lot of times in our communication, we'll say things and it's like, oh, but yes and no. But I love what you did not say was fake it till you make it. I think that is such a hard thing on the mindset. And we begin to, like you said, the imposter syndrome. We get into a space where we're trying so desperately to become that we forget who we are. And then we get to that end goal. We do arrive and we're a bigger mess. Yeah, we created our goal, but we don't really have true confidence. We have a faked version of it and a less authentic self. Do you see that sometimes in the women that you work with, and how do you get them out of that space?
100%. Most of the women we work with have lost weight previously and gained it back, which, as we've talked about, that takes a toll on your confidence and your belief in your ability to be successful the next time. And so when you lose weight in a way that you're just kind of like white knuckling your way through, you're like, I'm just doing whatever it will take to lose the weight and I will be happy when I get there. I'll be confident when I get there.
Right.
You have a very rude awakening when you get there. And you're like, wait a second, all this stuff that I thought was going to be better when I was 150 pounds is not. And if anything, it, like you said, it can even feel worse because now we don't have our weight to blame.
Right.
Previously, that was kind of the scapegoat. And now you're vulnerable. That's been stripped away. And now you're left with just this wound of, oh, I still don't like myself as a person. I still don't believe in myself. And I think a lot of times that is why it's so easy for the weight to come back on, because it's comfortable, it's safe, it's familiar. And when you're feeling so exposed, what do? We turn to our familiar coping mechanisms. We turn back to food. We turn back to like, well, this is better than that was. So I think the real key in making changes to your physical health and losing weight in a way that lasts is to approach the inner work right from the beginning and to be very clear with yourself that losing the weight in and of itself is not going to create confidence.
Right.
The person I become while I lose the weight is where the confidence comes from.
Right.
And that has to be from a place of love and compassion. You can't hate yourself into confidence. You can't hate yourself. You can hate yourself into a different body, but not in a way that lasts or that builds confidence. It really does need to come from, I love myself as is. I am worthy, no matter my size.
Right.
But I know this isn't the best that I have to give myself or the people that I love. I know I have potential for more. I know that I can be showing up better. I can have a bigger impact. I can be getting more joy out of my life. And in order to do so, I want to work on making these changes to my lifestyle. And along the way, as you notice the small wins, as you start building these new skills and developing these new tools, that's where the confidence comes from. And I've had so many clients who have said, even before they reach kind of the ultimate goal, they do reach a point where they say, I know that I will get there. It's inevitable for me to reach that goal because I believe in myself. So you don't develop the confidence along the way. You don't develop the confidence at the end. You develop it along the way.
Right. Beautifully put. I think a lot of times when women come and sit in my office, they'll often say, I just want to get there. I just want to get to the end. I'm like, but you will miss everything you need to be able to celebrate that end. You will miss every single aspect that gives you the forward movement that you're asking for once you get to the reward part. And they stop and they go, okay, I'm going to stop pushing. Yeah, stop pushing. Start being in this now. Start living this in a new way. You've got to. That's the only way that it is sustainable at the end.
You're absolutely right. And that's such an important piece of it. What you're doing needs to be sustainable. And I don't mean that like the exact actions that you're taking, you need to commit to for a lifetime.
Right.
But if you're enjoying the process along the way, you are better able to remove the self-imposed time component from reaching the goal. Right. Of course, it would be nice if we could have whatever we want instantly. We all want that. That's human nature. That's fine. Yeah. But we also know that it's not reality, period. And I think sometimes it's hard when we focus on our physical health, it's hard to see how true these things are, even though they're obvious in other areas. So for example, you might want to build a successful $1 million business overnight. That'd be great. But I'm going to have to put in the work to get there. And there's going to be ups and downs and I have to stay consistent for a long time and I'll eventually get there. You might want to get your PhD immediately. It's a process. It's very easy if you talked about financial health. It's very easy for us to say, of course, I can't wake up tomorrow and have saved $10,000. Right. It's going to be a little bit at a time. We have that logic when it comes to the other areas of our lives. Yeah. But with physical health, I feel like it just kind of doesn't compute. We're like, no, but I just want it to be faster. Right. Yeah. And you just have to recognize this is a process. And not just that, but we were talking about identity a minute ago. There is no end to your commitment to your physical health. And part of like, if you have these self-imposed timeframes of, by my 40th birthday or by this vacation, I want to see this number, you're just further exacerbating the ups and downs, the ons, offs. Because sure, the goal might shift. At some point, the goal is to maintain, or the goal is to, be able to do some physical thing, run a 5K or whatever. But the commitment to your health needs to be lifelong. And if that's the case, then the immediate urgency, if I need to get there now, is kind of gone, because things aren't going to change drastically once you're there. You're going to continue showing up in pretty similar ways long term. And I think that can really help, is to, remind yourself, if I approach this in a way that I enjoy day to day, it won't feel hard. It won't feel like a sacrifice. It'll feel relatively easy once I get over the hump to keep going. And as long as I'm enjoying the process along the way, noticing the wins, celebrating all of those small things, then sure, it'll be great to celebrate when I get across that whatever finish line.
Yeah.
But I'll also know that's really just another step in the journey to my best self.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it makes me think of something that I often will ask women, like, what's your motivating factor day to day? Right? Like, what lights you up? And sometimes it's like, oh, I love to play video games. Like, I have women who say that, and I'm like, okay, great. Make a game out of the menu, make a game out of getting to the gym, or make a game out of whatever. Or I'm motivated by downtime. Great. Like, what can you do to get to the downtime? Or I'm motivated by spending quality time with my family. Great. What is that sort of game piece for you? What's the motivation to keep you moving forward? But speaking of that, there has to be, and I know for certain on what I do, there is little pitfalls in our thinking, in our action, that is anti what we're trying to do. And so, what are the areas that women most miss when it comes to all of this beyond the confidence or the motivation or just getting started?
Great question. I think to go back to something we touched on at the very beginning, how the actual exercise and nutrition actions are the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest pitfall is that we tend to overly focus on those
Mm-hmm.
and not make the connections between the other lifestyle related factors that
Okay.
can make those easier or harder.
Right.
So, for example, one area that I see come up very often with clients is setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily think, I want to lose weight, therefore I need to address the lack of my boundaries.
Right.
But what ends up happening as you start developing the skill of reflection and self-awareness, you realize the reason that I'm having such a hard time getting my workouts in, or the reason it's so hard for me to carve out an hour to do some meal prep, is because I'm not setting boundaries with anybody. I'm not saying, no, I need this time for myself, or things of that nature. And when you realize the thing that's actually standing in the way of you taking the actions, solving for that is a game changer. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
time management. Maybe it's you're like most of us saying, I don't have time to do all the things. And then you do a time audit and you realize, well, I had 6 15-minute chunks of time
Right.
yesterday where I just scrolled on my phone and did nothing productive. Imagine if I had used even half of those to
Right.
get something small done. So I think the biggest pitfall is just being like kind of laser focused on, I just need to do it. I just need to do it, and
Mhm.
not exploring, why am I not doing it? And then
Right.
solving for those things.
Mm.
And that's largely because of what we talked about earlier, that they seem like tangents. It seems like, no, I just need to stay focused on this obvious stuff. And it's like, you're not seeing how much harder this other stuff is making those things.
Right.
Another example is the tendency that a lot of us have to withdraw when we're having a hard time.
Yeah.
And not enlist the help of our friends or our family.
Yeah.
And ask them for what we need. We tend to have this like me versus the world mentality a lot of the time,
Yes.
where it's like, well, I don't want my kids to have to eat anything different because I'm the one trying to lose weight. They shouldn't be impacted. My husband does a lot of the cooking. I don't want to ask him to portion out my food differently or to cook with less oil or butter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We make our lives harder because we're not willing to have the conversations and say, this is
Right.
what I'm working on. This is why it's important to me. Here's how I can help. Can you do that? So
Mhm.
all of those things, I think we think about it as like the mass of the iceberg underneath the water. Those are the pitfalls that most women need to address and just are overlooking.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And so take that just a little bit further. We have to look at communication. So asking what we need as intent. That's what communication is. I am going to X, Y, and Z. That's intent. I'm telling you what I need. I'm telling you really a boundary line for myself as well. Communication is all about intention. And so if we look at, okay, hubby or spouse, partner, whatever, I need this in order to be successful. If you actually have a true partnership with that person, really, are they going to tell you no? Right? So we have to be intentional with the conversation, intentional with the communication. That's what it's for. And so begin to think about it that way. Boundary lines is all about communication. Communication is intention.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we know that walking is something that all of us can start, and it's a very simple way. We don't have to go from 0 to 1,000 and hit the gym and spend 9 hours there in order to see results. Can you give the ladies that are listening some small little victories to get started?
I'm a big fan of celebrating all the things along the way.
Right.
So first you establish your baseline. This goes for pretty much anything with exercise and nutrition. What are you currently doing? What's the norm now? And then you set incremental goals along the way to where you would like to ultimately be. You've very likely heard of the goal of 10,000 steps a day, which interestingly, I was researching for a book that I'm writing this year. And that number actually came from a Japanese pedometer marketing company.
Wow.
There was a Tokyo Olympics, and they had the pedometer that they were marketing, and they settled on 10,000 steps because the Japanese character for that number sort of looks like a person walking.
Interesting.
That was it.
Interesting.
That is where it came from. So there is nothing magical about that number, but it does make a pretty good sort of reach goal for most people. Right. I'd say naturally, if you don't have an active job or hobbies or things like that, most of us probably get between 2,000 and 4,000 steps a day if you're not going out for a walk and things like that. I'd say anywhere north of 8,000 steps is a really solid place to be.
Okay.
So look at where you are now. Look at where that 8,000 plus goal is. What are doable steps along the way? I know personally for years, I tried to go from 0 to 100 over and over and over again with my steps. Right. I would tell myself it's 10,000 or bust. I would feel like I was moving heaven and earth for several days trying to get them in. It just didn't fit in my lifestyle. It was too drastic a jump.
Right.
Now, it's very rare that I'm under 10,000, but it took me years to get here. It was a very gradual. Well, if I'm currently doing 4,000, let's try to get to 4,500, or let's try to get to 5,000. Yeah. So that's my first recommendation, is just set those small goals for yourself so that you have something to celebrate. When your average goes from 4 to 5, amazing. Celebrate that. It feels good. And once you've done that, you've got the evidence. I can do a little bit more. Now, 6,000 doesn't seem that hard. It's only a little bit more than what I'm currently doing.
Right.
So that's a big piece of it. I'd say the next way to really start building in a lot of very easy to notice wins is to start incorporating in strength training. I consider steps as the base of your movement pyramid, just overall healthy lifestyle, active lifestyle. The second chunk is strength training. And again, this does not mean you need to go to a powerlifting gym and try to lift hundreds of pounds. A couple sets of dumbbells are a great place to start. Even if you don't have those, start with your body weight. Fill a backpack with books.
Right.
Get the full laundry detergent jug that is massively heavy.
Right.
And
Ridiculous.
use what you have. It's very easy to do just sort of like a basic strength assessment. Maybe I set a timer for 1 minute and I see how many squats can I do? How many push-ups can I do? And you jot those numbers down, and then you follow a progressive strength training program for 4, 6, 8 weeks. And then you retest yourself. Right. If you have been consistent, you are going to see improvements. And it feels so good to see like the actual physical manifestation of your strength. Before I was doing push-ups on my knees and I did 5 and then I smashed into the ground. And today I was able to do 10 from my toes, good form. It's undeniable progress. It makes you feel strong. It makes you feel like a badass. It makes you feel like you can tackle more. I think the exercise in general is an incredible way to build confidence because it teaches you how much stronger and more capable you are than you think. It teaches you to show up and do things that feel uncomfortable, that feel like out of your wheelhouse. It teaches you to be comfortable being a beginner. And then those transcend the walls of the gym or your guest bedroom or wherever you're exercising. Those are the sort of wins that you take with you the rest of the day, throughout the week, throughout the months. I know myself when I'm doing a tough workout, if I push through, I play mental games with myself. You talked about that earlier, where, I'll say, okay, if it's too hard, just quit. Right. And I know I've developed the confidence to know I'm not going to. So I can kind of taunt myself with that. If you're new and you're in the habit of quitting, that's not a great idea. But my point is, when you push through something that felt hard and you wanted to quit, it doesn't even matter. I can't even remember any of the specific workouts that's happened in, but I do remember how incredible it feels to have shown up for myself. And that I've been on a high the rest of the day. I'm not a quitter. I can do hard things. And think about how different you would go through the day if that's what's playing in your head, as opposed to I quit like I always do. I can't do hard things. It's a completely different outlook on life. And all you had to do was show up for a quick workout and finish it. It's a pretty small price to pay.
It is. I'm a runner and I do that myself. I'll play that game with myself. Like, just one more mile, just keep going, keep going. You're not going to quit. It's okay. Oh, and then I hit that mile marker on my watch and I'm like, yes, it'll be a physical loud yes. And people are like, what? I'm like, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm just celebrating. We're good. We're good, folks. But really, I mean, it's that a big burst of adrenaline and dopamine, where you really are getting that good feeling flooding your body. I beat myself, because that's really what it's about. You against you. That's it. You against you. Let's talk about something I hear very often. I have to say I'm there too, is us ladies over 40 hitting this spot where maybe things are slowing down a little bit. We are in a space where we've been really active, but maybe the energy is not as high anymore. We've got all of these hormone changes and it becomes harder. What we were doing before is not as, sustainable anymore, or it's not showing the same results. What's your thought process there? Because I know we have a lot of listeners in that age bracket too.
Yes, this is the exact demographic that I work with. I'm very familiar with those frustrations and challenges. I think the first thing to note is that physiologically, our metabolisms actually stay pretty steady well into our 60s.
Right.
So this sort of belief that, oh, now that I'm 50, 40, 35, my body's just not what it used to be. What's really driving the change is our lifestyle.
Right.
When we get older, our kids are older. They're less dependent on us. We're spending less time chasing them around playgrounds, more time sitting and watching them play sports, that sort of thing. We also, as we get older, a lot of us have more financial means to take vacations, do leisurely things, go out to nicer restaurants, buy fancier wine. And that paired with less activity overall means we're moving less and eating more in subtle ways that we don't necessarily notice. So that's when we kind of tend to blame our metabolisms. That said, the hormonal changes in perimenopause are undeniable and the symptoms are real. But again, it's comforting that lifestyle can significantly mitigate the symptoms that you experience, including weight gain.
Right.
Our bodies do have a tendency to redistribute weight to our midsections in menopause, but the average actual weight gain from, menopausal symptoms, only about 10 pounds.
Right.
So a lot of times it becomes this very easy scapegoat where, it's out of my hands. It's hormones. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
And it's just so disempowering. It's important to recognize what you can change and what you can't.
Right.
Accept the things that you can and understand. My mom always used to say, getting old is the good news. So, okay. The choices are you have the good fortune to live through menopause and navigate this transition, or you're dead.
Right.
I think we'd all choose menopause, right? If those are the stakes.
Option A, please. Option A.
Right. So I think that is a helpful reframe, that this is just part of being a woman who is getting older. And we don't have to like it, but we do have to accept it.
Right.
And the more energy we devote to resenting it and bitching and moaning about it, the less energy we have to give to what can I do to make it more tolerable. Maybe not enjoyable, but more tolerable.
Yeah.
And with that is a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Eating a nutritious, high protein, high fiber diet can do a world of good. Strength training, daily movement in the sense of walking. One of the main reasons I see women saying, you know, what I used to do before isn't working anymore is because a lot of us were very cardio focused and had an emphasis on really long kind of grinding cardio or short, really intense cardio really often. And it just becomes more important to recover as we get older. So kind of shifting your exercise focus from cardio, maybe a little bit of light arms, never take a day off, to your walking, your strength training, your rest and recovery, and your cardio is more of like the sprinkles on top of that, where as you enjoy, as you have time for, as your lifestyle allows you to recover from, you add in the cardio. So just sort of being open to doing things differently. I think sometimes we get so resentful. I don't want to change things. I just want this to work like it used to. And again, you're entitled to those feelings. But at a certain point, you have to decide, do I want to just like sit here being resentful, continuing to do the same thing, even though it's not working? Or do I want to move through the discomfort of learning something new, how to approach it in a way that's appropriate for my body right now? As far as nutrition goes, we do become more sensitive to carbs as we go through menopause. It is not to say you need to be eating a low carb diet, but more so being a little bit more strategic with when you're having them, prioritizing them around your workouts, and then sticking more to like your high fiber veggies outside of that. That's one of the primary changes. Alcohol, I know nobody wants to hear it, but it's not doing you any favors. You don't have to completely abstain if you're unwilling to, but reducing it to the smallest amount that you are willing to drink is going to benefit you. A lot of times there's just like everything is so interwoven that due to the hormonal fluctuations, you're having more difficulty falling asleep, or hot flashes are waking you up. So sleep is already impacted. And then you put alcohol on top of that, which is already going to make your sleep worse. You're just piling stuff on top of stuff. So the more variables within your control that you can account for, the better it's going to be. And I think another piece is that we tend to, again, focus on the food and the exercise and not the other stuff, your sleep, your stress management, your social connections, just kind of the quality of life that you have, all makes a big difference. And all of these things, if you're willing to focus on them, can make a huge difference in mitigating the symptoms and side effects of peri and menopause.
And when we're talking about the confidence piece of all of that, is to really get into a space, not as an excuse, but as an understanding to continue to build confidence, is that your body is not the same as it was 5 years ago, or 5 years before that, or 5 years before that. And you do have the option at any point to create the body, regardless of your age, that you so desire. And that gives you the confidence to live that healthy and grounded middle area that you were talking about. We don't want you in the high highs. We don't want you in the low lows. We'd rather you be consistent and feeling good.
1,000%. Yeah.
I don't want to end this conversation because I feel like there's so much more that we can really talk about. But what is sort of the top tip that you want the listeners to hear, to know, to take away, and be able to kind of put it in their journal as, oh, wow, okay, Esther said that and I'm going to focus on it?
I think it's twofold, both of which we've kind of covered, but I think they're so important that it's helpful to reiterate them. The first one is that there is nothing wrong with you. Like we touched on, we have a tendency to make things personal. And they're just not. So if you take anything away, know that what you're experiencing is universal, and it is not evidence that you won't be successful. It's evidence that you're a human with a dynamic life. And if you don't have the people in your life to open up to and help remind you of that, it's worth the effort to find them, to create the community, to create the support so that you don't feel alone, because that really can make or break your success. And I'd say the second piece of it is to just start. I know we covered a ton today, and even in our efforts to say, how do we combat overwhelm? When you
Yeah.
listen to an hour-long podcast, it's very easy to be like, okay, I jotted this down. I should be doing that. I should do that. And now
Yeah.
you've got a whole laundry list of all the things that you should do. So just pick one.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be the catalyst for all the other things. It doesn't matter what you pick. So don't get caught up in, I don't want to pick the wrong thing. There's no wrong thing. There's no wrong. There's no right. There is just the first one. And from there, you'll figure out the next one. Trust yourself to know that as you keep going down that road, the steps will reveal themselves. And if they don't, that you have the resourcefulness to find the answers, to find the help that you need so that you can keep moving forward.
There is a time and place for every single thing. And every single thing doesn't have a time and place in this moment, right? We have to remember that. We have to be focused on what's going to work for us and how we're going to work for what we want. So I appreciate so much. You have listened to the podcast, so you know that we end every episode with 3 gratitudes. So I ask you, what are your 3?
I love this. My son is going to be 5, and just last night at dinner, we started practicing gratitude. He didn't know what it was. I had to explain it to him, and we started practicing. And in an effort to give him examples, I just started rattling them off. And I was like, you know what? This is so good for me too. I'd fallen out of the habit of keeping my gratitude journal, and it just feels so good. When I think about it, I have so much to be grateful for. At this very moment, I am grateful for my son being able to give me the quiet space that I needed to focus my energy on this podcast and to entertain himself so that I could focus on this. I'm grateful for technology that connects us across time zones. And previously we were in Germany, and I was connecting to people all over the world, and just how amazing that is. And to tie it in to the topic of this podcast, I'm grateful for the confidence that I've built over the last couple of decades that shows up for me in so many ways, in having my own podcast, in reaching out and feeling confident in the value I have to offer to your listeners, and in all the ways that I know that confidence is going to continue to support me and my mission in the future.
Beautiful gratitudes. It really does change so much when we focus on what is working for us. How can people find you so that they may reach out and also work with you?
Thank you for asking. I have a podcast called Live Diet Free. So if you're already a podcast fan, you can stick that one in rotation. We've been at about 2.5 years. So we've got a ton of episodes for you to check out. If you want any specific recommendations, feel free to reach out. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Esther Avant. And if you are on a weight loss journey of your own or want to start one, I have a weight loss that lasts cheat sheet that distills down the formula that we use in our coaching program, Gone for Good, and breaks down the 3 components, the goals for them, your next step to actually implement them. And I also offer a 15-minute breakthrough session to help you customize that to your life. So you can get that at esteravant.com/cheat sheet.
And we will put it in our show notes as well. So just to go straight to the show notes, and it'll also be on my website. So do that and then get started. Thank you for your time, your energy, and just the knowledge. And great conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you loved this conversation as much as I did. Esther is a true authority in this field. Confidence doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it. The biggest questions are, am I supporting myself mentally, emotionally, and physically? Is there an inner dialogue that's working to my benefit? What do I need to change about my habits? And what can I do to best make myself fully confident? These are great questions to be asking yourself right now, today, and then put the answers into motion. If you want to grab your free weight loss cheat sheet and learn more about Esther, you can head to her website, esteravant.com, or you can visit her on Instagram and Facebook at esther.avant. That's AVANT. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration and additional tools and tips, you can follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and now Clapper. You can also visit my show notes and blog and my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it with friends and family members as it helps spread this message to those who may need it. While you're there at my website, I also invite you to check out the new 15-day affirmation course, which you can find there and also on Insight Timer. I'm taking you on a journey through your brain chemistry and how you can connect to it to make your greatest dreams and desires come true. It all starts right now, and you can also find that linked in the show notes. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.